You're heading down? Yo. You need a plug? You need a plug? Islam. Let's get started up. Let's just rise and give our honors. Face the east. 5 on the left, 2 on the right. Allah, Father of the universe. Father of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Allah is my protector, my guide, and my salvation. By night and by day, His holy prophet, Islam. Prophet warns all Muslims, governors, ordered to read proclamation at each meeting. I hereby inform all members that they must end all radical, agitating speeches while at work, in their homes, or on the streets. We are for peace and not destruction. Stop flashing your cards at Europeans. It causes confusion. Remember, your card is for your salvation. Failure to obey these orders will be of severe consequence. We are for love, truth, peace, freedom, and when these principles are violated, justice must then take its course. Any member or group of members who hold malicious feelings toward the temple or the prophet, or violate the divine covenant of the Moorish movement, will receive their reward from Allah for their unjust deeds. All true Moors will and must obey the laws laid down to them by their prophet. If they lose confidence in their prophet, they should turn in their cardon button, cease wearing their turban and fez, and return to the state where I, the prophet, found you. This is a holy and divine movement founded by the prophet Noble Ali. And if the prophet is not right, the temple is not right. The prophet, therefore, is sending out a divine plea to all Moorish Americans that they do their part in protecting their prophet and the temple. This is an everlasting movement founded by the prophet through the will of Allah to redeem his people from their sinful ways. Noble Ali. Islam. To be proclaimed at every meeting. I am glad to know that I have a few faithful Moors among you all, and I desire for them to know the truth and the divine truth. There is a host of jealousy about me and the movement now by the same people of our side of the nation that claimed that I was only a joke and unreal. But now, since they have found out from the government officials and the nations of the earth that this is the only sole foundation that all Asiatics must depend upon for their earthly salvation as American citizens, they are working every scheme that they can to disqualify me so they may take charge of the situation. I have notified all these things to you long ago in the past. It is through the faithful Moors that attribute to the movement and uplifting funds. The ones that paid their divine respect to me and the movement will be remembered. That is why I am calling upon all faithful Moors to increase their faithfulness to me, your prophet, and your divine Moorish movement. I need finance, and I need it badly. Never before have I needed finance so badly as I do at present, so I can shove aside the discord that is facing the nation. It all comes through jealousy because of my fame and nobility. The nations of the world will not recognize the movement without I, the prophet, being head. It has been proven by my works which I have performed in the past few years. Prophet Noble Ali. Islam. To the members of the Moorish Science Temple. Islam. This is the instruction from your prophet Noble Ali. Be faithful unto your forefathers' divine and national creed, that you will be blessed for your good deeds that you sow in the flesh. Allah is the one that judges the world, and his judgment is now on, but the weak can comprehend it not. The end of time is drawing near, so says Allah to his divine prophet, I Noble Ali. And that's why many hearts have been turned to stone. Many have eyes to see but cannot see, ears to hear but cannot hear, lest they will be confounded of their sins. These are trying hours now, dear Moors, and every evil spirit is moving, and they are trying every weak mind to overthrow and drag out the true foundation that has been laid, and to cause confusion in the minds of the ones that do believe. But if you have the true love of Allah and the spirit of your forefathers, you fear not what you hear or see, but would sacrifice the utmost of your very life to protect your movement and your prophet. Watch your enemies, dear Moors. Your enemies are the ones that speak against your prophet and ridicule him to the very lowest, and the ones that speak against your divine and national principles of your temples. Act accordingly, and Allah would bless you for your good work. Peace, your divine prophet, Noble Ali. Islam. Oh, this man probably unplugged the thing. use the plug downstairs. Couple things for today. There was this BIPOC article, and then I also wanted to play that video that you put out this morning in the group with the bankrupt thing. Yeah. So we can talk about that. And
the woman who said it, she's actually part of the assistant teacher at the university there.
Okay.
So history professor, sorry.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, we can start there. We can start with that.
Good evening. The Ford government will be reversing course of initial intent to allow for greater police powers. This comes just one day after the new measures were announced, causing massive backlash. The announcement Friday allowed police to stop people at random and ask where they lived. Today, the province taking that back and saying police will only be allowed to stop vehicles or people if they are suspected of participating in an organized public event or social gathering. The statement from Solicitor General Sylvia Jones said this afternoon read, "Our priority has always been to address and discourage gatherings and crowds that violate the stay-at-home order and have the potential to further spread COVID-19.
The fact that anyone can be stopped and questioned by police just by virtue of being out of their home is, it turns our normal world sort of on its head.
The Canadian Civil Liberties Association was just one of the many groups outraged by the province's initial decision, even threatening to take legal action. Shortly after tonight's announcement, the organization said it will put the legal challenge on pause, saying the new order rationalizes and narrows the unconstitutional Friday standard. The new standard is also tied to a public health objective and avoids arbitrary detention. Some advocates speaking out saying giving police more power would result in racial profiling of Black, Indigenous, and people of color.
It also demonstrates that he doesn't really put the priorities and the needs and the safety of the people in this province first, particularly those who are most marginalized. That's what this has demonstrated. It has demonstrated that he is bankrupt as a government.
The change comes after a number of police services across the province, including Toronto, took to social media saying they wouldn't comply with the new order to randomly stop people and question why they are outside. The price of a ticket if individuals refuse to comply with the stay-at-home order remains at $750.
Right. So, one thing that we want to put out is in the new stay-at-home order. Somebody brought this to my attention today. They're talking about. Yeah, just push that door. They're talking about this idea, please. Yes, bro. Yes, sir. You need a drink or something? We got some. If you open that cooler, you can take 2 drinks out of there if you want. Fare for the bus? How far are you going? I got one something. Hold on, let me see if there's anything back here. Yeah. You don't have no not allergies, right? No problem. We are safe out there. That's about temple more than church. Yeah. All right, bro. So the COVID measures, we're talking about inter-provincial travel. And they said starting Monday, the province is setting up checkpoints at all inter-provincial borders. Ontario would limit access to border crossings between Ontario and Manitoba and Quebec. Travelers who are coming into Ontario for work, medical care, transportation for goods, and exercising Indigenous treaty rights will be exempted. Right? Travelers who are coming into Ontario for work, medical care, transportation of goods, and exercising Indigenous treaty rights will be exempted. Yeah, right. So that's along the lines with why we're taking the position of being the Aboriginal and Indigenous people, because there's certain rights that Aboriginal and Indigenous people have that doesn't apply to Negro, Black, colored, citizen, whatever else, right? With regard to the audio that we were listening to, we have Canada civil rights organizations standing up to the fact that there's these orders that the quote unquote government is issuing, but they're also acknowledging that they're bankrupt. Yeah. So if they're bankrupt, they can't be somebody's government. And then if they are bankrupt and they're pretending like government, how come the people are still allowing stuff to happen when they're bankrupt? And that's not just Ontario, that's municipality, that's Toronto, right? That's Canada, and also United States and all their states as well. Right? I think I heard somebody. Yeah. So them acknowledging that they're bankrupt and nobody saying anything about them bringing this thing up, about them being bankrupt, and that was City News that was on. So it's obvious that there's underlying things going on that might not be too known to the public, but it doesn't take away the fact that it is what it is, even if they're not talking about it, even if they're not bringing it up. And again, we can go back to George Traficant, who was Ohio House of Representative, that went on the House floor and talked about all this stuff. The United States being bankrupt, no such thing as mortgages. They've been stealing people's rights, and that was mid 2000, and it still hasn't really hit, because the people have been put in this. They have the people who are in charge have a way of immediately diverting people's attention from the real issues, right? One of the other tactics, again, is the creation of all these different ways to classify people, right? So when we talk about BIPOC, we're talking about Black, Indigenous, people of color, So now they have all of these people lumped up now as one thing, right? Now, keep in mind that when they talk about Black, indigenous, people of color, that doesn't mean the indigenous people. This is a separate thing to lump all those people together. Indigenous people are over there, they're a separate thing. BIPOC is a whole new creation in order to get the marginalized people to be under the same banner, so it's easier for them to corral these people, right? Where did BIPOC come from? The acronym, which stands for Black, Indigenous, and People of Color, is suddenly everywhere. Is it doing its job? Black Americans have been called by many names in the United States: African American, Negro, colored, and the utterable slur that rhymes with bigger. In recent weeks, as protests against police brutality and racism had flooded the streets and social media, another more inclusive term has been ascribed to the population: BIPOC. The acronym stands for Black, Indigenous, and People of Color. Though it is now ubiquitous in some corners of Twitter and Instagram, the earliest reference the New York Times could find on social media was 2013. As a phrase, people of color dates back centuries. It was first cited in the Oxford English Dictionary with British spelling color, C-O-L-O-U-R, in 1796, and it is often abbreviated as POC, people of color. The other two letters for Black and Indigenous were included in the acronym to account for the erasure of Black people with darker skin and Native American people, according to Cynthia Frisbee, a professor of the strategic communication at Missouri School of Journalism. The Black and Indigenous was added to kind of make sure that it was inclusive, Ms. Frisbee said. I think the major purpose of that was for including voices that hadn't originally been heard, that they wanted to include in the narrative: darker skin, Blacks, and Indigenous groups, so they could make sure that all the skin shades are being represented. Charmaine Nelson, an art history professor at McGill University, said that the history of Black and Indigenous people in Canada calls for the distinction between them and other people of color. In some parts of Canada, mainly east of Ontario, Indigenous people were colonized but not enslaved, unlike Africans who were subjected to chattel slavery everywhere. We understand that under colonialism, African and Indigenous people had a very different experience. To conflate everything in one is to erase, which is the very nature of the genocidal practice. Now, recognize that they're talking about the idea that lumping these people together is somehow making the situation worse and hiding the history. But they're not addressing the fact that calling people Black is hiding the history. Calling people African is hiding the history. Calling people Indigenous and not by the tribal is hiding the history. And calling people of color is hiding the history. Because as soon as you identify as the things that you're not, you automatically erase yourself from history yourself. And they're just perpetuating that by putting it all together. Not hiding the history, but keeping the history hidden by bringing it all together. And then they're bringing it under these same brands that have been used all throughout history. Like they said, Negro goes back 1700 or whatever, and people didn't want to be called that. But then they're going to say that they're Black, which Negro means Black. So they're still calling themselves Negro, even if they say Black in 2021. And they're still, look up color in this. We understand under colonialism, African and indigenous people had very different experiences, right? All of them are the same people. The Africans, the indigenous, the blacks, the people of color, all of them are the same. All of them are relative, right? Taj Shariq Bey was teaching that the brands is what separates them. And then even if the people could get further, even if they picked one brand and said, okay, we're just going to be people of color and unify under that, they'll get further than what they're trying to do right now, with everybody wanting to be something different or whatever. You got color? All right. Go ahead.
Under colonialized, right?
Under color. All right. So you're gonna see color, and then you're gonna see colored as well. Any thoughts on the BIPOC or anything else that we talked about so far?
Just bringing on the adjectives together.
Mm-hmm.
Basically.
Yeah.
Getting all that together and hopefully just give them a dictionary and they figure it out from there.
Yeah.
So they gave an ice line and said, it's black, it's indigenous, it's people of color, but boys.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is a guessing game.
Yeah. Nothing.
Is that the English linguistics, the English language, though, is also bastardized how we talk to, because the English language also.
Well, it's only that from the perspective of when you're dealing with the connotation, the connotative language. But when you're dealing with the etymology in English, then you're being specific with regard to certain things that you're talking about. So, for example, Nobujwali said, colored is anything stained, painted, varnished, or dyed. That's what colored is. Nothing else is colored. So if you can't be painted, stained, varnished, or dyed, then color shouldn't really apply to you. And then if you are going with that your color, and you're saying that you can be stained, painted, varnished, or dyed, then you're admitting that you're a thing. You know what I mean? So people of color are people who are paint, stained, varnished, or dyed. When you look at it from the origin of color, right? When we look at black being pale. So the origin, the thing of English being a bastardized language, and it because all the different languages have this complex relationship with English, right? Because there's words in the English language that you're not going to find in other languages or whatever. But again, once you look at it from the origin of the language perspective, then you'll have a clear definition for the uses of the words that we're using, right? Which is going to clear up the whole bastardization of the language. So what we've been doing is, as our people, we've not been dealing with it from the etymology. We've been dealing with it from, abridged definitions, or definitions that have stuff taken out, not giving you the parts of speech, just being absolutely vague with we're just going to call children kids just because, we don't even know where that came from. Why did they start doing that? But it's something that we've adopted, not knowing about, well, what's the origin of kid? Kid has nothing to do with children, really and truly.
I look at it that sacrifice, right?
Mm-hmm.
What you do with what is a kid? What's the problem in the English language with kid? It's an animal, right?
Right.
What do they do about children? Sacrifice them like the animal.
Yeah.
So that's why they use that word.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we stay away from that kind of
Right. Right. And then that's what's gonna make the language be more pure, even though we could say that it's bastardized because it's the newest language. You know what I mean? It's just came about, and it's a culmination of all these other languages. Because there's ample amounts of words in English that aren't even English words. There's words they took from another language and they just took it, and now they're saying that that's their language. You know what I mean? You know, alchemy is not an English word. Algebra is not an English word. You know, certain words have no connection to the English language, but they're being used under that thing of the connotative meanings, not the denotative meanings. You got color? All right.
Do you want me to read it aloud?
Yeah, sure, please.
So color, an appearance, semblance, or
Simulacrum.
simulacrum, as distinguished from that which is real, a prima facie or apparent right, hence a deceptive appearance, a plausible assumed exterior, concealing a lack of reality, a disguise, a pretext. Then it goes on to say real group company.
Right. Yeah. So based on that definition, when people say they're people of color, what are they saying? Based on that definition there.
It's like a mask, it's not the truth.
Right.
It's like a cover-up.
Right.
Prima facie, you see at first.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So, you know, before COVID, masks, you're not going to the bank with no mask on. Because having a deceptive appearance means that you could be engaging in criminality. You're not being truthful. You're not being honest. If you're walking into a bank and then all we're seeing is the eyes and then the mouth and everything else is blacked out, you're not being honest, right? That's how the world is looking at our people when they say that they're people of color. Which is why the world doesn't assist them with anything. Because for them to approach from a deceptive appearance or approach as or in a deceptive appearance, they're looking at you funny as far as the world. They're not looking at them as honorable people because they're being deceptive. They're wearing a disguise.
We portray that way through television of who, you know, we're not truly being portrayed. We've never been truly portrayed. No one knows who we really are.
Right.
We ourselves don't even know who we are. That's why a lot of us are complicated today.
Yeah.
Figure that out.
Right. But but the issue is that people in that same realm, Black, Indigenous, people of color, there's people in that who know. Just like the lady who came and said, yeah, they're bankrupt. And everybody pretended like, no, they didn't hear that part. They're just talking about Black, Indigenous, people of color conversation. Instead of talking about, she just said that the province is bankrupt. If they're bankrupt, how are they government? How are they representing you if they can't even represent themselves? Right? There should also be colored in there.
Colored.
Yeah. It should be after all the color of title, color of.
Yes, I see it. Shall I read it again?
Yeah.
By common usage in America, this term, in such phrases as colored persons, the colored race, colored men, and the like, is used to designate Negroes or persons of the African race, including all persons of mixed blood descended from Negro ancestry.
There's some order.
Holland versus Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Okay, and then smaller.
Yeah.
But where a state constitution provided for separate schools, right? For the white and colored races, the term white race was held to be limited to the Caucasian race, and the term colored races to embrace all other races. And then the second paragraph says, it has also been held that there is no legal technical signification to the phrase colored person, which the courts are bound judicially to know. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
But I want to be a crayon, you know?
Yeah.
It's more,
Right? So once the people don't read, which is the pattern with our people, right? They will watch stuff, then read, right? Then they're not getting these lessons because they're not going to find visual telling you that. That's only going to be in, and then they also have our people absent from civics, which is dealing with law, which is why we brought that dictionary so that you can see it from a law perspective, that there's no legal signification to this term colored. But we're gonna go, they got article right here from 2020 talking about people are people of color. And they're not even gonna bring up, well, you know, in the law dictionary it says that colored, there's no legal signification to that. So why are these people calling themselves that? That alone should disqualify it from the people accepting it as an identity. Just that alone. You got a few thousand pages right there. We're talking about one page, an indent in a section. That kills that whole thing about color. And then also too, it's tying in that if there's no legal signification to color, right? And then they're saying that color also means the African and the Negro and whatever, then there's no legal signification to those either. Because all of those are under color. Right?
Not specific. Can't be vague.
Yep. Have to be vague. These one. Yeah. These rough. All right. Many what we know is more often than not, they have been pretty much non-existent in any discussion about race or any discussion of any kinds or any kinds of things. We don't see any narratives that include them. What we do see when indigenous people are included in sports, we have images and mascot controversy, and then you have products that rely on indigenous people like Land O'Lakes, margarines, and butter. Many Black people are often given space to the plight of Native Americans, but there is a frustration when it comes to the BIPOC term. It is lazy to lump us all together as if we all face the same problems, said Sylvia Obel. When you blend us all together like this, it's erasure. It allows people to get away with not knowing people of color and our separate set of issues that we all face. It allows people to play it safe and not leave anyone out. And it also allows you to not have to do the work. In a moment when Black Americans are asking that the names of those killed at the hands of police be said aloud, and when Black people are asking for equal treatment on a global scale, trying to fit all people of color and Native Americans in one term can seem tone deaf. The whole point is that we want to take up space. Take the time to say Black, Latin, and Asian. Say our names. Take the time to learn. Show me that you know the difference. To attempt to represent so many different identities in a single term is a product of colonialism, according to Chelsea Luger, a wellness trainer at the Native Wellness Institute and enrolled member of the Turtle Mountain Band Chippewa, a tribal nation in North Dakota. It is a redundant term, if anything else. All people of color are indigenous. A lot of people of color are not acknowledged as and don't have a connection to that idea because their indigenous identity has been erased through assimilative techniques or just the connection to our stories, and our stories has been violently taken from us. The indigenous community critiques the designations of Native American and First Nations, as the indigenous are called in Canada, because their diversity is not recognized in those terms. The fact that people think that we're one homogeneous group and they don't acknowledge our diversity contributes to our dehumanization. It is common knowledge that European and white Americans came from multinational complex backgrounds with very diverse histories. It is dangerous when you perpetuate the notion that Black and indigenous people of color are homogeneous. Some are comfortable saying BIPOC. It was, should I call them Black or African Americans? But BIPOC came out recently, said Gabby Beckford. I don't think it's supposed to be dividing, Ms. Beckford said. If you are talking about Black people, don't say BIPOC. If you're talking about over-policing in the United States, you can say Black people. It can seem lazy, but if you're talking of people of color in general, compared to the white experience, I think you should say BIPOC. This is like when we asked that they arrest the cops who killed Breonna Taylor, and they're like, how do we pass a law? Mrs. Obel said, we're asking for a lot of things, and being called BIPOC is not one of them. Stop making decisions for us without us. And the reason why they're making decisions for them without them is because the people don't have any connection to rights. They don't have any connection to land. They don't have any connection to a constitution, to a flag, no connection to a nationality, because they're calling themselves all these different fictions that were supposed to be already off the table. They weren't even supposed to be around anymore because Nobujuali came to us that were not Negro, Black, colored back in the 20s. And then today, we're still here having this conversation about what should these people be called when the world knows who we are as a people. And everybody is sitting back, waiting for these people in North America to get their stuff together. And until they do, then the world is going to keep moving around them, and our people are going to be stuck in this limbo of not knowing who we are, not knowing our culture, not knowing, always getting abused, always getting violated. Nobody's coming to help us. We can't help ourselves, and that perpetuation is strictly based on us being called something that we're not. That's how they're able to do what it is that they're doing, because the people are taking that position of accepting it, right? They're gonna march and picket and whatever, and they're gonna be screaming this stuff at the top of their lungs in hopes that somebody hears them. But you don't hear people that you can't see. And our people aren't counted because they have completely avoided the idea of them having nationality. They think it doesn't matter, and they think they can make up stuff and call themselves that. We talk to Chinese, they go back thousands of years being that. No questions asked. Talk to Germans, French, whatever, they go back years being called that. All the different countries on the continent, they go back years. And then, like they're saying, they're so diverse that those nations are even broken down more into all these different tribes or whatever. You know what I mean? That, you know, they're not avoiding who they are. You know what I mean? Somebody might play around and call them African or whatever, but they're not they don't put that on themselves, that they're that. You know, they don't embrace that they're a continent. They embrace that they're tribe. Native Americans, they don't embrace we're American. They embrace their Chippewa, their Algonquin. They embrace the fact that they're part of the tribe. You know what I mean? All right. Any questions or comments? So we also wanted to look at how it got to this place where the people don't have the knowledge of this, and that it seems to be only the Moors who have this thing sort of going in the right direction as to what direction we should be going as a people, right? Meaning that we're not these brands, we're not the adjectives, we're not continents, we have a nationality. But even within that realm of us having a nationality, there was corruption in that, why we are in this situation, right? Because people were given all these keys, people were given all these lessons as to how we're supposed to govern ourselves moving forward. And we strayed away from the foundation that was left by Noble Drew Ali into all these other things, right? So on top of the people who left the Moorish movement, within the Moorish movement itself, there was infiltration, there was corruption that created this confusion that everybody's now in. You know, there's people who are Moors right now with nationality cards that they're looking at what Noble Drew Ali did as a religious thing. And they don't see it as a civic thing. They see it as, because we say Allah, because we say Muslim, because we say Islam, oh yeah, this is religious, right? There's Moors in this who, if you're in the Moorish movement and you're out there with a fez on, you're in violation, because the fez is only supposed to be worn in the building. When you're out there, you're not supposed to have fez on, right? This is how it is with some Moorish groups that are around right now, right? When that's absolutely corrupt in its nature and its practice, because you're not going to see the yarmulke only in the synagogue. You're not going to see the Sikh turban only in their temple. So how is it that the Moors have a national headdress, but then that's not being used out there by anybody who says that they're a Moor or a turban, right? So we're going to take an excerpt from Bringing the People Back into the Constitutional Fold of Government by Rosmariah Bey, just to deal with this whole thing of the infiltration of the Moorish Science Temple, and the importance of us recognizing that there is an element in this that is a traitor to this. This is why we read the things that we read every meeting.
Right.
And he's talking about faithful Moors and have a few faithful Moors left and all that, because during his time in the 1920s, there was traitors around him that were trying to get him out of his own thing that he started in order for them to take over, which they ended up doing, right? Get him out of his own movement, take over, and cause this confusion on the inside, and then confusion for the people outside looking at this, and they're looking at it like, oh, if I just came from Christianity and these people are talking about Allah and all that stuff, I don't want anything to do with that. That's pretty much Christianity all over again. Just saying Allah instead, right? Page 37, events leading to the death of the Prophet. Let's do a backup to just before Noble Drew Ali passed form in 1929, as this is what led to the above debauchery. Noble Drew Ali successfully headed the Moorish Divine and National Movement of the world. Under the Moorish Holy Temple of Science, with thousands of members that went into close to 1 million or more by the time of the infiltration. He gained respect and support of various congressmen, such as Oscar DePriest, as Noble Drew Ali was a true diplomat. There was a fellow member, Claude Green, who became very jealous of him and wanted to take over the operations. We can't be sure if Green was a devoted member or an informant, as there are very little information leading to the events wherein Drew Ali and Green had an argument. Green put Noble Drew Ali's furniture out on the street as an indication that he was now the new leader. Later, they found Green's body shot and stabbed. The FBI immediately came after Drew Ali, where they found him sitting with his wife and some members collaborating, as the FBI claimed. They took him to prison. He had 2 consuls who later gained political prominence, Aaron Payne and William L. Dawson. The principal being Payne. Payne tried to hold things together. This is why Givens broke into his office. While Noble Drew Ali was in prison, he wrote the following letter, which is said to be the last writing of him because he got out on bail and he was dead within a few weeks. They report that it was either from the beating he received by Chicago, admitting he was beat, or from the beating he may have received from Green's posse. Drew Ali's letter to all heads of all temples. Islam. I, your prophet, do hereby and now write you a letter as a warning and appeal to your good judgment for the present and the future. Though I am now in custody for you and the cause, it is all right and it is well for all who still believe in me and my Father God. I have redeemed all of you, and you shall be saved, all of you, even with me. I go to bat Monday, May the 20th, before the grand jury. If you are with me, be there. Hold on and keep faith, and great shall be your reward. Remember my laws, and love ye one another. Prefer not a stranger to your brother. Love and truth, and in peace I leave you. Peace from your prophet. And then after that, he was pretty much assassinated at that point, right? Now, when we look at, for example, we look at Aaron Payne, there's a picture that was in the Chicago Defender newspaper of Noble Drew Ali's funeral. And in the picture, they have Noble Drew Ali's casket, and then there's Moors around the casket. And then in the front of the casket, there's an individual there with white gloves on. And in the caption of the picture, it's talking about the individual with the white gloves being the reincarnation of Noble Drew Ali or whatever, right? And is the new leader of the movement. That was Aaron Payne, right? Now, after Noble Drew Ali transitioned, and then you could look him up, Aaron Payne became one of the top attorneys in Chicago, right? He became big time in Chicago, Aaron Payne, right? It's also said that Aaron Payne is the one who filled out Noble Drew Ali's death certificate. And then in the death certificate, it says that Noble Drew Ali died of sickness, when they know that he got beat up. They know that he was assassinated. So for somebody who was on Noble Drew Ali's side to take the side of putting out this erroneous information on Noble Drew Ali, one, lets you know the prominent status that Noble Drew Ali had, and two, that his own were the ones who are against it. When our people are looking around today and they're talking about the white man did something to them and the Europeans doing this and the KKK and the police and all that stuff, has nothing to do with any of them. It has to do with their own people who are working with those people, right? Because remember, Drew Ali was on murder charges, was going to be indicted and got out on bail. If he was guilty, they're not letting you out like that. You're not being released. If they have If they have a hard case on you, you're doing dead time until trial day, right? So the fact that they let him go lets you know that they didn't want anything to happen to them. They were protecting themselves by releasing him. And then whoever they released him to are the ones who we have to be looking at as the issue with why things are as messed up as it is when we say, you have this element of our people that always look at the Moors as, well, if they were going to save us, they would have did this. They would have had a hospital. Where's the Moorish this and that? How come the Moors don't have an army? How come you're a nation and you don't have this and that? Because of the infiltration on the inside. Why? And then that disease spreading to people outside of the movement in order to make it look as if, this is nothing to take serious, when this was the most serious thing going on in the 1920s. Next to the UNIA, it was this, right? And then when we go back to that, we see that everybody knows about UNIA. Everybody knows about Garvey. Everybody knows about their conventions going down the street. How come we don't know about the Moors doing the same stuff in Chicago, right? Informants, infiltration, infiltrators, and surveillance. Now, the FBI had many informants and infiltrators who were members of the various temples. They utilized surveillance and microphones. They reported the temple meeting as being conducted in the following manner. First, there is a minor sheikh or sheikhess or chairman who reads from and explains the Quran. Then a more elaborate disclosure by the grand sheikh. Christian hymns are sung with Allah, Juali, and Muslim substituting God, Christ, and Christian. This is from the FBI informants who were there, right? Which again, going back to this thing of getting the people to look at what Noble Juali brought as something religious and absolutely disconnecting that this is supposed to be filled with civic activity. Religious is this much of what this is all about. Because when we really look at what this is religiously, it's really, it's really that poster right there, the man poster. When we say religion, when we say Moorish religion, and you hear Allah and Islam and all that stuff, before you go, make sure you take a picture of this so you can go over that to see what religion means in this, right? Religion doesn't mean what they're talking about, replacing Allah, Juali, and Muslim with God, Christ, or replacing God, Christ, and Christian with Allah, Juali, and Muslim. That's not what the religious side of this is. Noble Juali said, the Moorish Holy Temple of Science adopted as its corporate name Moorish Science Temple, and Moorish Science Temple was a religious corporation. That wasn't because this was a religious thing. That was because everybody out there was religious, and in order to get them in here, they had to be dangled the religious carrot, because where they were in their mind was that religion is where it's at. And God and Allah and whatever like that, outside of yourself is really what it is, right? When it's really an internal thing, right? Please, how you doing? I think they were left in the fog once the Prophet passed form. It was like they were not able to continue the great works and they were left unfinished. Not because of the Prophet, but because of the need to be guided by someone with integrity and intelligence. You must remember, this movement took root within only 40 years of supposed end of slavery of the Moors in North America. The investigation was just after the Depression and at the helm of the Japan War. A lot of the Moors in North America could not read very well. The Prophet said, "If I told you everything, you would go back to sleep. I think that is what they did. Due to the loss, thereby a lack of true integrated and intellectual leadership. Now I recognize after reading through these pages that there was a major investigation and infiltration, and that this is where some of the things now considered traditional crept into the mix. For instance, there was a particular temple in Richmond who would not speak to anyone unless they were a Moor. They described them as being low-lying, poor Negroes who were ignorant, and they determined they did not have the intelligence to be subversive to the government. They made no attempt to expand and talk the little with people outside of the organization, right? So this is supposed to be something, according to Noble Drew Ali, that it's Rotarian. So it's humanitarian. That this is supposed to go not just in these walls, but it's supposed to be taken out there by the people who are in these walls. That's why the people in these walls have this information. To go out there and go get these ignorant whatever people and bring them here so that they can learn the right information so that they can start getting ourselves together as a whole, as a people, right? But when we talk about the infiltration of the Moorish movement, the other side that's brought in is the whole aspect of Prince Hall Freemasonry. And the fact that a lot of these quote unquote converted people were Christian ministers who were Masons that were coming into this. And then once they get that high position of Grand Chief, Grand Governor, or whatever like that, now they have the power to say yay or nay to the activity that takes place with this, which again was supposed to be humanitarian, civic. It's supposed to look out for the children, look out for the women, and all that stuff got eradicated. And it turned into, this is a religious thing. This is a, holier than thou thing. If you're not whatever, then you can't be part of this. If you're not within these walls, you don't count as being Moors or whatever the case is, right? By the time they got to Kirkman Bay, he was totally aware of the investigation, and he expressed to the FBI that he was planning to institute a suit against the New York temple leader and some others for infringement, fraudulently opening temples without proper authority. There was one temple leader, he said he would not press charges because he was very ill. Imagine the FBI's investigation starting out with local chapter 35 in 1936, Hartford, Connecticut. Then the FBI discovered more and more activity and recognized that the members are seriously battling to bring charges against each other. So when Noble Drew Ali transitioned, right, all these different individuals who were fighting for his position as prophet, and then they call themselves reincarnated prophet and supreme grand advisors and making up all these different things. All these individuals now took Noble Drew Ali's fame and nobility, and then it pretty much got spread thin. The fame of what this is, because it was limited in one individual at first, right? It was concentrated. The fame and the nobility was concentrated. When Noble Drew Ali left the scene, all that stuff got diluted because of all these individuals taking a piece of the fame. This guy took a piece of the fame, goes over there. This guy took a piece of the fame, went down there. This guy took a piece of the fame, started saying that they're not even saying Moors anymore. They have the teachings, but they're not saying that we're Moors. They're saying that there's something else. Some other guys down there took it. They took the fame and they said, okay, well, we're not going to wear fezzes. And then somebody else said, we're not going to give nationality cards. So they diluted this thing. So when the FBI infiltrated in the 1930s, they realized that the stuff was already done. Job was already done. They didn't have to do anything because these Moors who were in it are gonna do the job and destroy themselves. To the point where Drew Ali even told these Moors, don't call the European on your brother in the literature. But then here they go, taking different Moors to court because, for example, somebody's temple over there is saying that circle 7, they're using the 7 with the 4 quadrants around it. They're using that symbol. Or we're going to sue them because we're the authority and they can't be using that. Then some guys over there, they're using the handshake symbol. Well, we got that copywritten. You know what I mean? So others can't use it. When you look at when Drew Ali was around, there was no copywriting of universal things. You know what I mean? Things that are connected to the Moorish nation belong to the nation. It wasn't a thing like it's Noble Drew Ali's and he owns it and you can't whatever unless, right? I think it was more like a 3-ring circus. Take note that this started at the so-called law enforcement, lower and local levels. These people, sheriffs, state attorneys, local police officers, were ignorant themselves. It was when it got to the later years, around the 1950s, that by the knowledge of C. Kirkman Bey, they began to recognize that their investigation and intent to accost and suppress the movement and the issues of nationality surrounded the movement would have been taken to a higher level. Kirkman Bey had a farm wherein Moors were employed and were able to provide sustenance needs for the Moorish community. Turner L. also secured a loan for a 100-acre farm in Berkshire, Connecticut, to purchase livestock. And there was a chicken farm in Gordon Heights, Long Island. Earlier, at the beginning of their investigation, they threatened people with taking money under false pretenses and the confidence game. They also made allegations of a government overthrow by Moors and the Japanese. One of the grand chiefs, Washington Bey, was incarcerated early in the investigation based on a statute to make criminal the teachings of a belief that advocates overthrowing by violence of the present form of government. The rumor was that Moors were told that they were telling others that when the Japanese takes over the country, all they had to do was raise the Moorish American flag and the Japanese would not molest them, and that they would take them to a place where it was safe and they would not have to fight in the war. The temples were at this time scattered because of lack of power and leadership and knowledge of protocols. Some were too busy seeing who would be the boss and apparently forgot to continue to study. So for that instance, the entire issue of selective secret service would not have been an issue. The temples turned very drastically into a religious association only. The FBI had no interest in religious organizations as they felt comfortable knowing that if they were recognized, if they were religionized, they were not a threat, right? So we're looking at, remember we're talking about 50s, 60s and all that. We're talking about World War. We're talking about different wars going on all over the planet, and U.S. being in the middle of it all, right? All these other nations, right? Taking the position of wanting to go against U.S., right? Taking that position, recognizing that, oh, hold on a second, they're not really who it is that they say that they are, right? And that played out with Muhammad Ali and him not wanting to go to war, right? Him joining the Nation of Islam getting out of the name Cassius Clay, which was a European name that would make him have to go to war, and then saying that he's Ali, which is a Moorish name, which tied him back to the land, tied him back that he's indigenous, tied him back to, I'm not a citizen of U.S., so I don't have to go fight your war. But having him under that brand of Cassius Clay, and Nation of Islam also being an infiltrated organization by the FBI and all that during that time, right? These people knew that as soon as knowing who he was going to be, as soon as he started saying that he's Ali and all that stuff, it's gonna cause something to happen, right? Which is why they got him out of circulation and put him in prison, opposed to saying, okay, we're gonna send him to war anyways, because it would have made the situation way more bigger than just get him out of circulation for a few years, so all this stuff could calm down, right? Because remember, he didn't go with Cassius X and all this type of stuff. Elijah Muhammad didn't do the X and all that. Farrakhan didn't do X or whatever, right? All these individuals came from the leadership of the Moorish movement that knew about nationality, birthrights, knew that they're not Negro, black, colored. You go through all the NOI early literature and they're talking about so-called Negro, so-called this and that, so-called. They would never call their people the fictions because they had the lessons to know that our people weren't that, right? And then when we're looking at this whole thing with the relationship with the Japanese and the U.S., and if the Japanese take over, then that's showing that, you know, these Asiatics are going to work with the Japanese and stuff. That's the same thing that they used with Farrakhan and Chief Malik, Jeff Fort. Same thing that they used with them with Gaddafi. That these people are terrorists and all that stuff, and if our people are working with them, that means that our people are working with the side against the U.S. government, and we can't have that or whatever like that, when all those people are the same blood. All those people, El-Haj, Malcolm used to talk about the same rabid dog that bit you, bit me. So why are we fighting if we both know that the enemy, we know who the enemy is? If my, you know, and again, Muhammad Ali made a reference. I'm not gonna go across the Atlantic, go kill my brown brothers and sisters. Why didn't he call them black? If he's talking about black people, why did he make reference to the people who United States wants me to go fight didn't strip me of my nationality? This is Muhammad Ali talking, right? What does he know about nationality and being stripped of it to present it like that? And then the people miss the whole thing, and they're thinking about some other black whatever stuff when he's straight talking about nationality, right? But again, why wouldn't he? He's a Ali. Not only is he a Ali, but he's taught by the people who were students of Noble Drew Ali. So of course they're going to be taught, but that's not something that was taught on the common level. That was something that was only taught with the people who are in the high ranks in the Nation of Islam, because if the common people realize this, then the common people know that Elijah Muhammad, Fard Muhammad, and all these people who are claiming some authority are fraud, because all of them study from Noble Drew Ali. So why don't you just acknowledge Noble Drew Ali as the man? Why does Fard Muhammad have to be reincarnated Noble Drew Ali? Why don't you just recognize Noble Drew Ali if he's teaching the same stuff that Noble Drew Ali was teaching, right? In fact, the FBI reported that some of the members were too busy for religious thrills, as they had to work for a living and would have no time. However, And it is ever so important to note that at that time, we lacked the true meaning of religion, as religion is government, order, and principles. If we knew this then and now, we would not be so far behind in our actions, as we would be active in government and would not allow anyone to violate our divine inheritance and gain a false sense of authority over us and the dominions of our forefathers. Right? So when this thing went religious and Masonic, because of people who are on our side of it, right? And then that stuff's still going on today, that there's people who they have campaign to have Moors who are coming into this information to think that we're not the government. The government is some people out there who are European colonists, and because they're presidents and prime ministers and they have a building that they go to and have their meetings, they're government. But then lady just came on the thing and said that they're bankrupt. And then if they're bankrupt, then maybe it's time for you to start fending for yourself, which is the whole point of what this was established for. So that people who are marginalized, people who are disenfranchised could get out of that status of disenfranchisement, be with individuals who look like them, who have the same mindset as them, that would actually take their interests in the right perspective in order for us to have our own thing, that we don't have to be relying on going to them. It's not like we don't have the finance to do it, right? If our people are going to fund Black Lives Matter to the point where these people are buying mansions and stuff like that, right? Then we have the finance. Money is not our problem. Where our money goes is our problem. And most of the time our money goes to things that have nothing in return for us, right? We're constantly consuming, never producing. Now once we're consumer, then that's what you get. You get the scraps. Right?
Asians call us strippers. Asians call us strippers.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Sure, yeah.
Do you know, like was it pinpointed who actually started to, for lack of a better term, masonify the movement? Like Freemason, like introducing concepts that are making the Moorish movement Freemason concepts, concepts being infiltrated.
Yeah.
Like who is the source of that?
Multiple different parties, because we're looking at Noble Drawley being the head, right? If we look at it like the clock, right? Noble Drawley is the center that the hands go around, right? And then 1 to 12 are all the different individuals who were part of it that were supposed to support this thing to work. No different than Yahshua had his 12 disciples. And then he taught them whatever they were supposed to take that information and then go out and get the people and liberate them. And they didn't do that, which is why they were able to rain down on him and murder him.
The individuals themselves.
The individuals themselves who were supposed to take this or who were supposed to exercise this in its proper capacity, right? Which lets you know how early U.S. had infiltrators in there. Because there's no way that you can get this information and think to destroy it.
Right.
Right? It's no different than we love vegetables and stuff like that, but then we're gonna create some seeds that we throw those in the thing and destroy all the vegetables.
Right.
And then the stuff that grows can't be growing every year. Every year you gotta plant these fake seeds every year.
Right. So but ultimately, because it sounds like a combination of both within and without, like
Mm.
infiltration from without.
Yeah, yeah, but the initial infiltration started from within, and then the infiltration from without are people who were within that left.
Right. Gotcha.
Right. So when that's why we always bring up people like Nation of Islam, because they were in this, and then they left, but they didn't go get their own building. They took the building that was the Moors building, and they just took the sign down and put up a different sign on it.
It's interesting because the information in terms of the beginnings of the Nation of Islam is so fragmented that you don't know, at least the information that I've been exposed to is so fragmented that this is the first time that I've heard of it makes sense, but them coming from the, being taught by Noble Drew.
Yeah, that's why we have Elijah Muhammad's picture right there with his fez on and all that, because we know that they know what's up, right? Dr. Malachi York, right? United Nuwapian Nation of Moors. Why are they talking about Tamari and motherships and all this stuff when they got a birthright here? You know what I mean? How come when he went to court he was wearing the red fez like the Moors for all of his whole trial? How come he wasn't wearing the little fake stuff that you see them wearing right now? How come he was wearing all that Egyptian stuff and all that when he went to court? Because he knew what was up. This is about nationality and birthrights. This is about honors to Noble Drew Ali. Even with regard to Dr. York, he gave the Nuwapians their own Circle 7 Quran from Noble Drew Ali. Intro in the front of it. Yeah, you know what I mean? I met with the Moors and we're putting this together for the Nuwapian brothers and sisters so that they can get down with this. And then he gone. Same thing that they did to Drew Ali, right? Same thing that they did to El Hajj. When he said he's leaving NOI because he found out about all this stuff, went to Mecca, found out what real Islam is, realized what these people teaching wasn't Islam. Muhammad Ali, same thing. Found out what real Islam was. These people are fakers. They're not really Islamic like that. How they go to the Hajj and then people are telling them, Nation of Islam is not, like, we're not Nation of Islam. We're Islamic, but we're not Nation of Islam. That makes no sense. Right? Right? But it's all part of the thing that you're talking about. This fragmented idea of the Moorish paradigm, because all those people are Moors. They might not say that themselves. They might tell people they're Black Asiatics and all that, but we know that's a fiction. They know that's a fiction.
Why do they want to live that way?
All for this. All for fame and nobility. All to be able to get Washington to go have a 1 million man march, or people walking all over the country, or people coming from all over the country to go on the slave auction blocks, because that's what Washington D.C. that's what they used to use that for.
Because I know Elijah Muhammad too is changing his teaching again. I can see that he's
Farrakhan
is teaching
Yeah.
differently than he did
Yeah.
even 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah.
I can see that he's curving away from.
He's Brunei.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. So flimsy. Just like saying you're a grown man now, you're like 80 something and you're moving away again. Like, you could have settled, right? You could have started speaking.
As
an old man.
they can.
It's like all deal. It doesn't matter. There's always going to be one of them.
It's just recognizing that element exists.
And I think they give an oath too.
Yeah.
To deceive.
Yeah.
The moment they get out of that oath, then they're gone.
I know, and if they
I
can
They shot dude because he told the truth. Shot him right there. He says, I've been to the mountains.
Yeah. And he said, I'm not going to make it there with you, or whatever like that. You know what I mean? He already knew they were going to take him up.
The prisoners in their own land, they're not
Yeah,
even
yeah.
paying attention to what
Yeah.
they're literally saying to them.
Right,
Still
and this
go
is-
back to a place we never been.
And that's their boy.
That's their boy.
That's their boy. Martin Luther King is the people of color's boy. Okay, well, he said that you guys are a slave in your own land. What the hell is he telling you? Obviously that you didn't come from anywhere if you're a slave in your own land. Obviously he's telling you that. So logically, if your leader says, you know, you're a slave in your own land, and then gets off the podium, and then everybody's still talking about, oh yeah, we're black or whatever, they didn't get it. They missed it completely. But then how'd they miss it? You know, which is the same reason why El Hajj used to go to lectures, and then he's telling people, what are you guys clapping? What are you clapping about? What do you mean I say something, you're clapping? Stop the clapping. There's not no clapping time. People get murdered in the streets, you're clapping about something? Better get your stuff together. You know, right? The infiltration process began at the very beginning of the investigation. The first place to be infiltrated with microphones was Mount Si, Illinois. This came after Hartford, where Washington Bay was the head. Washington, in attempting to continue the diplomat activities, wrote a letter in 1942 inviting the president to the convention at the 44th and State Mound City, Chicago, Illinois. The confidential informants called writers that the Negro informants reported to were concerned about Japanese and subversive activities from members of the Japanese Chamber of Commerce. This brought concern that the Japanese officials may spread propaganda. It was later found that the Japanese may have been connected to the Pacific movement of the Eastern world who were pro-Japanese. Arrest failure to comply with Selective Service Act. With lack of proof of any connections, they took up the charge of the members' failure to enlist into the selective services and began by way of inside informants gaining a list of all the members and checking their names against the records of the board of directors for the areas in which they lived to see if they had enlisted. This is how they began to arrest and halt the Moorish Science Temple's operations by taking men away, and certainly the leaders or sheiks and grand sheiks. After forcing them to enlist, they gained information on them and they utilized their list every time they found out about a new temple. They always managed to have an informant, infiltrator, submit to the list of members so they could check it against all other lists and track the whereabouts and involvements of the members. The members they interviewed were giving up a lot of information on each other. The FBI even had names of the ones who would always know where another member was residing and how to get in touch with them. It is interesting to note here that the Moorish Science Temple of America was designed to be a nation within a nation, and that can only be right. After all, the United States of America was designed for the same reason. This means no one could ever file their name in any county or other demos association for the record. The records of the members' citizens remained in the files of the temple. If one were to be involved in any case, they would have a consul dispatched to assist. This ought to stand today. Let's look at the written comparisons. The United States of America, a corporation of the land, in the land, but is not the land. It is a written agreement. The Moorish Science Temple of America holds a different meaning in that the members/citizens are part and parcel to the land of their forefathers, as the land is their inheritance. So to nationalize is one part. To claim your inheritance is the vast estate that Noble Drawley speaks about. That makes a whole heap of sense. Look up the words partial and parcel in a law dictionary, and it will become much clearer. So this having to do with, again, the infiltration. And not only did they just infiltrate in the movement, but when these infiltrators and subversives were part of it, they started changing literature. They started taking out words, putting in different words, so that the people's concepts are going to be wrong because they don't even have the right words on the page. So one of those things is part and parcel. Noble Drawley making the statement that Moors are part and parcel of the government, so you have to obey, right? Meaning that as Moorish Science Temple of America, that yes, we're part of this organization, but this organization is part of the land because it was founded by our foremother and forefather, and it's our inheritance that we're getting from this, right? And our inheritance is whatever our ancient foremothers and forefathers had, now we have it because we have their name, opposed to having the name of the colonizer, which is going to give us the colonial inheritance, which is slavery, marginalization, disenfranchisement, gentrification, and everything else which is corrupt. You know what I mean? Opposed to everything that's de jure, that we're supposed to be inheriting as, you know, the quote unquote heirs, which is why the statement is made by Noble Drawley that we're not Negro black colored, because Negro black colored can't inherit anything. Only people that can inherit are people who have national standards, which is why, you know, the Jews have their own blood bank. They're not going to, you know, Sunnybrook or whatever like that. They're not going to Red Cross if they want blood. They have their own blood bank they're going to, right? When we talk about Chinatown, and you go there and you never see anything other than those people there in every business, from convenience store to what their banks to whatever. Even in their bank, they only got their people in there working. They only got their people in there working. I thought this was supposed to be inclusive and all that stuff, and you know what I mean. Everybody's supposed to, and the same game that they play with our people. That, you know, oh yeah, well, you know, you watch for example, City TV now. Now it's all these Hindus on there. You know what I mean? You ain't seeing any brothers and sisters on there. Where they at? With this inclusive society and all that stuff. How come they don't got no jobs? Where's everybody who looks like us? Every business you go to, oh yeah, inclusive, and then they got the one token black guy there or whatever like that, and they call that equality, right? But then, you know, when you look at it from the perspective of who are these people, if they don't have a nationality, if they're stateless, then nobody wants them around. Even in the face of equity and all that stuff, they're not having them people around, because blacks, people of color, indigenous, they don't count as the human family. All those labels identify people who are wards. And if you're a ward, you're a minority. And if you're a minority, ain't nobody taking you serious. You're gonna go sit in the corner and whatever. They're not taking you serious. Right? Oh yeah.
Well, I had a further thought though that maybe really what it's indicative of is the nationality game. They're calling themselves Chinatown. So there's only going to be Chinese people there.
Mm-hmm.
That's why when you go to Little India, there's only Indian people there. It's because that's the national perspective. You're only going to find nationals in their place.
Mm-hmm.
So in fact, it's yet again reflective of the rights of nationalization, which is that you can be anywhere and you can have your national rights. It's like I told you, go to Chinatown, you can get anything you want there. Right? And the same rules don't seem to apply there that apply outside of it.
Yeah. All right. Quote, J. Edgar Hoover. There is a fast-moving colored movement which is now very dangerous with strongest hold in Chicago, headed by a Negro, C. Kirkman Bey, known as Grand Sheik. They have split in several small home meetings, massive meetings held at the Golden Gate Hall at Orleans and Hobby Street in Chicago. They are very seditious. They were started by the Japanese. There is a Japanese stirring up plenty of trouble for the colored people, and they want to speak before the NAACP. They started under the name Science Temple of America, known as the Temple of Allah. Some NAACP members are against it. Some are not. Detroit is strong. They will start many other groups under religious structures. See if the leaders have Consul Evasion of Selective Services Act. It should be noted, several colored informants have been developed by this office, and an attempt is being made to place them in the various colored organizations in order to identify the leaders and also the statements which they make at meetings. The FBI had threatened the leaders to stop teaching with imprisonment for deceiving, taking money under false pretenses, and confidence game to the end where they would get a hold of the letters, memos, addresses to Grand Sheiks with the help of inside informants. They would check for the same typewriter to see if the previous apprehended sheik was sending out the letters. They could not match the names with any of the files already, mainly Washington, as he was the original threatened and arrested leader out of New York Temple, who set up the Hartford Temple. They stopped him. Oh, and then speaking about head of the New York Temple, also remember that the projects called Noble Drew Ali Projects in Brownsville was property that was bought by a Grand Sheik of New York, right? This was like 60s or something like that, 60s, 70s. And then this baseball player bought it in I think the 80s or the 90s, right? So when we look at the impact that the Moorish movement and the leaders of the Moorish movement had during the times of, hey, those got water already. During the times of this whole infiltration and stuff like that. It's not like they weren't making certain moves, right? They were doing certain things. There were certain things that they were doing that was directly relative to us being liberated, us being free. You know, like they were talking about, Moors had farms, more than 100 acres. They had, in Virginia, they had a Moorish colony where every house in there was owned by a Moor, right? You go there today, you got grass growing out the windows, right? So there was things done in order to suppress this. This is not some stuff that just fell off the map because it wasn't important. There was actual motives that people had to make sure that this didn't get to where it was supposed to, even during the time of infiltration. They had certain things in place where you know, we could get some stuff done. You'd say again? Yeah, yep. How many other questions or comments?
I was gonna ask the whole Chinatown thing.
Yeah.
They even have their own booths.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Condos, we convert to condo industry. The condos is like for them only. Everything.
Yeah.
And it's made up of lots of made up of
Yeah. And
families. So
yeah.
families are
And keep in mind that concept that they have of they have these communities or whatever, right? That is what the St. Lucians were supposed to do when they came here. And then the Jamaicans were supposed to do that when they came here. And then the Jamaicans and the Trinidadians and Tobagonians and the Barbadians and the Guyanese and everybody in the islands or whatever, when they came here for a land of opportunity and whatever, when houses were 40 grand, that's what they were supposed to do, right? And then if they did that, then there would have been no room for these people to come in here and do that, right? That's why we call it birthright theft, because they're not in their own land and they have more authority and power than the people whose land this is, to the point where they're going to set up a community. I remember when they started talking about the banks having different languages other than French because of the multiculturalism. And then they said, forget that. We're not even going to do that. We're just going to put banks in their neighborhood and put Chinese writing on it. Forget making all these banks around here Chinese writing. We're just going to put Chinese banks in their neighborhood so that way they can have stuff in their own language. And Hindu and whatever else. Right?
Part of that though is in terms of that, I don't even want to call it Asian infiltration, but that had a lot to do with the kind of their ability to buy up a bunch of real estate and then establish themselves and whatever. It had a lot to do with the Stephen Harper administration. Giving, like, basically, like, selling out this corporation.
Yeah.
Right.
But they can do that because of a people's relationship with their government, whether it's corporate or whatever, is based on the relationship that government or those people had with their ancient foremothers and forefathers.
Exactly.
Right? The relationship that they had with our foremothers and forefathers was their slave master, slave relationship.
Right.
Other people, nation to nation relationship.
Right.
Big difference.
Right.
So when they open the doors and they say, okay, we're gonna let all these different all these different nationals come here. One, they're coming here naturalizing to be part of building up the fake stuff that's not real, right?
It's like Vegas.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, you go to different parts, one look like Paris, one look like England.
Yeah.
You know, that's what they did.
Yeah.
Basically did that. Yeah.
Right. So we know from people who aren't from here that there's a lot of people who are coming here and then they're coming here under the white status, which gives them certain powers that the blacks are never going to have. So they already have the upper hand, right? You know, and then they're doing that with the people who those funds are supposed to be going to, negligent of even that they can apply to get funds for those stuff. They're going to go apply for welfare when they should be applying for some indigenous grants because they're the indigenous people.
Exactly.
They're going to go apply for some child support or whatever when they should be applying for some indigenous grants, right? But if they're not told that they're the indigenous people, they have all these leaders telling them that they're black and they're Negro and they're African and they came on a slave ship and whatever, then that's what you're going to get. Slave benefits,
right.
not national benefits.
Right.
You know, and then the perfect example is with Brampton, with the Sri Lankans and all of them. That, you know, You know, people from the east, we say that's bush. Ain't nobody going out there. You going out to Brampton, ain't nothing out there, right? Anybody was going out there for anything, right? One or two people. You move to Brampton, I'll see you when I see you or whatever, because you ain't gonna see me out in Brampton. Now these people went there and took over. That they run that whole spot to the point where they even got their little people in parliament and all that stuff in order for them to be able to get the finance, get the whatever, right? Yeah. And then our people when was the last somebody like us was in parliament?
I feel like it's just so interesting because we're talking about all these different nationalities who go to different areas, you know, they spend money amongst themselves, all of a sudden they fill up the area and it's theirs.
Yep.
Right? Yet, you know, Edmonton West, little that's supposed to be able to make us get gentrified. Right? Demolished. That sense of nationalism or that sense of nationality is part of that separatism, that division amongst our own people. And the fact that we need to remember that we're all the same, you know, like Guyana's not better than Trinidad. Or better than Jamaica. We're all the same, and we all need to band together. Right?
But again,
that nationalism, nationality.
The band together is not going to be based in an island you came from, or a color you call yourself, or that's not doing it. That's not doing it.
Within the family,
That's not doing it.
Now that it's colorism now. That's been something.
Oh yeah,
about the past 15, 20 just within the family. With our kind of lifetime, it's the same. So we move ourselves away.
You know, which is why people look at the Moorish paradigm and how Moors are with our people as, oh, you guys are the sellouts or whatever. Like, no, we see everything that the rest of the world sees with our people, and we don't want nothing to do with it either, because we already know what the outcome is. Well, you should unite with the black whoever's it, and then we go unite with them, and then they run down on the black guys and put us under it, which is perpetuating the same stuff. How about they come unite with us? How about they get on the side of nationality, like everybody else has done throughout the world, right? What did the fake Jews do after Hitler did whatever to them? They made up a fake nationality. They stole somebody else's land, and now they're running the world. That's people who they're not. That's not even them. That's not even their birthright. That's not even their land. But they're running the world under a fake nationality that everybody embraced as a nationality, when everybody knows that these people are.
What's going on in the jobs? It's saying like 60 to 70% of them.
Are we talking about Israel?
Yeah. What's your thoughts on that? What do you think is really going on there?
Oh, with us.
Why they targeting like Israel's like it's getting targeted huge right now. It's like
mandatory.
If they're targeting, well, I mean, you have to look at it.
Sacrificing them, or is this some kind of cover up for something else?
I feel like I don't want to like answer for you.
No, go ahead.
I feel like it's like when this whole no good thing started happening and people who weren't wearing masks were in a very public manner. There were select few that were getting like pummeled in the streets because they weren't by police. The country is publicly being being used as an example.
Exactly.
Set an example.
Yeah.
To create mental fear amongst all other nations. It's not working.
Yeah.
But I think that that's a big part of it, is that, hey, remember this country that Trump was, that went to the wall and said,
I know so many parents that get about
right,
everything.
right, but for a number of different reasons, it's just being set as an example to partly to create fear with every other nation, to say, hey, this is where we're headed, people, get used to it, that's my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree. It's just that there's a lot. You're supposed to look at that land right now. Something's supposed to come out of that land that that is disgusting, right? Something disgusting is supposed to be this holy land, and those in the know. I'm not going to be fooled by what's coming out of it, so I'm just trying to figure out, is that happening now? Like, are we seeing that manifesting that?
Oh, you mean like the unveiling of the the sickness? Absolutely. In my opinion.
Once you could also look at the whole point of the whole smoke and mirrors thing, that if they're talking, oh my gosh, something's happening, I don't know, whatever, something else is going on that they're not telling you about what's going on.
Those in the know.
That there's something else going on. Yeah, right. So like I was looking at I was watching something, and they were talking about how they brought it back up, that the virus it's really not that, it's the 5G killing people.
So it's
the 5G is really what's killing people. There ain't even nothing out there like that. Yeah, because it has to be at a certain level in order for it to work in its fullness, you know what I mean? But till they get there, they're gonna keep the thing at 4, you know what I mean? And then they have their little fake thing out there that they're telling people that's what's getting people, wear your mask and all that stuff, but they're not telling you, make sure you have your crystals in your pocket and make sure you got your
it's all connected, though. I feel like from the testing to the vaccinations to, let's dial this up a little bit, but we've all been vaccinated. We've got 50% of the population that's been vaccinated. Let's dial this up a little bit. And it's the ones that have been vaccinated that are going to get hit. Yeah. They're going to get hit the most.
Yeah. I got a question regarding that, but I'll let you finish.
But at the same time, we have energies hitting this planet because they can't stop the ascension or the sort of shift that's happening.
Yeah.
You understand? But amongst humanity.
Age of Aquarius.
Right. Yeah. And our DNA is on a constant basis, especially melanated people getting upgraded. And they're trying to keep up.
Yeah.
But every time they try to come with something that is supposed to bring us down, we're getting stronger.
Yeah.
It's like they're 5 steps behind now, when it used to be ahead.
Yeah.
The sleeping masses. But now, even though, especially those who are aware, and especially amongst the melanated, our DNA upgrades are helping to, nullify these effects that are supposed to be happening.
Back to what you said about the vaccines and so on and such. You notice that the numbers have been going up?
Yeah, crazy.
That's all
Crazy. Like crazy. 4,000 or whatever. They're talking about May, it's going to be 10,000 or something like that. Like, what are you talking
It's
about?
fabricated.
My friend's aunt
So
was told, because she was in a certain area, and said, oh, you might have been exposed to it. You should go get a test. And then she was okay, yeah. 2 days later, he gets a call. You tested positive. He's like, oh, really? Okay. yeah, you should get down to the doctors and da. She goes, yeah, okay, and she calls her nephew. She goes, I don't know how I could test positive when I never did the test. Never did the test. Yeah. So she's like, no, I'm not going to no hospital.
Never got the test and you got the call.
Yeah,
Positive.
yeah.
That's cool.
And now
That's
talking about, when there's periods now that, you know, right now it's affecting if you're close to anybody who's got the vaccines. It's messing up women who are pregnant. That's been something that's coming out now too. And those who went through that cycle decide to have periods again. So older women are having periods again. So
Omar, yeah,
be careful
that's
with
up.
those who are vaccinated.
Yeah, no, I mean,
Yeah.
It's like, I am legend for real.
Yeah, I am legend. Yeah.
Yeah.
Throwback.
Soul in movies.
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead, Omar.
no, so I was saying that I think no matter what the reasonings are that are happening, reasonings that are happening for what's happening now, what is evident is that there is a higher level of control going on.
Mm-hmm.
So whether, like the sister's saying, because I've mentioned that I said that this is the evolution thing happening, and maybe they're trying to keep up with that by having to inoculate us. The reason is that we ourselves become carriers of the virus. That's not killing us. It's really the evolution. It's the mutation, right? So they're trying to keep up. But for whatever the reasoning is, it's resulting in this control thing. Like, you know, that they've been hinting at this point, saying that if you're on the street now, the police can stop you and ask you where you're going.
Oh, we just played the.
Oh, sorry, I missed that. Sorry.
Yeah, well, yeah.
No,
Keep that thought.
No, so what happened was I yesterday was in a vehicle and I pulled up on the street and I don't think I had my fez on, but I had the glasses on and one of the gray and white Jeeps came by, and I guess just because of my presence in the car being all large, I kind of like pulled up and then I saw them stop, and then at that point I was like, okay, what's happening here? And they kind of like inch forward for about a good minute or so, and then finally a car came up behind them and they left. But I thought to myself, because I wasn't aware at that point.
Yeah.
But at that point they could have come up to you.
Yeah.
And then start at this point under these new sort of
guidelines. You know that they decided not to do that.
No, I know they just. But what I'm showing you is that a lot of this stuff that they're doing, like to me, anyone who's more about 1984. They talked about the era where there were cameras everywhere.
Yeah.
And in 1984, we all laughed at it.
Yeah.
But in 2020, we got cameras
everywhere. Yeah.
So, and some of the other movies that we talked about, the ones that are talking about the viruses and all that stuff, those movies that they told us are all visions of what's coming.
Yeah.
It's just the timing may be different, but where they're at right now is, like the sister says, we're evolving. We now are starting to know that we're not what they said we are.
Yeah.
So the magic's coming off of that.
Right.
What's going to be left to that for them is going to have us under control in some way. And that control now is a pseudo medical emergency, right? Where we can tell you where to go.
Yeah.
We can change economies right now. We can marginalize all those people. All the Europeans are working from home, eh?
Yeah.
You notice that, eh?
Yeah.
All Europeans are working from home. And this could be some virus that actually they're trying to take us out, but it's not taking us out.
Yeah.
It's just saying. Maybe
Cat.
that's really what's happened. Maybe they went to try to wipe out China and they just gave it back to us.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So we have to see what's really going on, and that's what was tying back to when we were talking about the communities that they were there. What happened to them?
The what?
The communities. You said that Prophet Jorali projects and those other places. What happened to them?
Oh, they're just
Well,
for example, the Virginia colony, that's pretty much it's just Negroes there now. It ain't even there's people who are Bay that live there, but they don't know anything about being Moors or whatever. They're just Negroes with Bay on their name.
No, my question to us is that what is stopping us from getting over that hump? And also what is stopping us once we've gotten over that hump, driving us back? It's obviously that there's an organized force that's making sure.
Yeah, that doesn't happen. Yeah.
Absolutely. you know, it's, I think the idea, because, I mean, it's like you go across history and look at the depictions of all the times that Black Wall Street was developed, and then they came in and made sure that they mushed out of, right? Disassemble it because they don't want, the most threatening thing to the establishment is for the melanated individual to know who they are and know their power, right? And then to band together, right? That's why I don't want everybody in them holes. Don't go anywhere unless it's essential. Thank you very much, right? They don't want people banding together and talking and building infrastructure. Our issue has always been getting to a point where we build the infrastructure and then it gets taken down. But we are in an interesting period in history where there's a shift that's coming, and there's a shift that's coming. One of the basis the basis, break down Islam. Islam is like, it is supposed to represent love, uplifting humanity. But love is the strongest vibration, the highest vibration. And that love is increasing at an exponential level rate. And that's why they're having such a difficult time, because these entities, these energies cannot function in that light.
And once they're established, we can't establish our own thing until their establishment is completely destroyed.
Well, or think about it like this: we can't establish our own thing until our people get on board with it, because our people who are ignorant or not in tune with the wave,
well, they're not part
right?
of the system.
Yeah, but they're the ones that the system's relying on to fund them, which is why the system's still around.
That's why the system has to be destroyed first.
Right.
I think it's important. I think that has to happen simultaneously.
Well,
Exactly. Well, I don't know if you saw the brilliant analogy, but she's like saying, as this, she puts sugar cubes as a pyramid, and she uses this water. And water, when you drop water in water, it's ripples, right? And that's energy. That's us. Until we pour that water into that sugar cube, and that sugar cube starts to melt. And becomes liquefied. That's the only way. So in that same process, as we're trying to build on a one level of just energy, that structure starts to come. That's the only way.
But again, going back to that thing, that if we're talking about pour the water on the cubes, right? Yeah, if we're talking about pour the water on the cubes, but then we have our own, keep putting cubes there,
right?
Or removing the water. This is why it hasn't really manifested like that.
It's about the shift, though, because that negative energy is not going to establish itself any longer as we're going through. It's just not going to exist.
Brother Omar, yeah, so?
No, I was just saying.
I'm just being optimistic.
Yeah.
I was having the thought that when I was talking about what it takes. It takes a single-mindedness. It's going to take a group of people, which is going to continue to grow. They're going to have a single-minded purpose of seeing this thing through. The same way a fan who died for his team. Until we get a bunch of people like that because we know us, we kind of, we've all identified as being black, but because that's nothing, it's never given us anything. Right? So we're always being let off by something. We have worked, we've stopped, it has been kind of bred out of us, that connectivity. We'll hate a brother before we'll hate a European. A lot of us. We'll meet our own people on the street. Right? Until that spell has been taken off of us, and we see that brother across the street as our brother, we're kind of going to continue along that. I think that's what it is, and because then nothing, that's what it says in the Quran. That when the people are together, no enemy can beat them. Right? It says it's like chaff against the wind, right? So
and again, that togetherness is nationality.
right,
Because they're looking at the so-called enemy is looking at all of us as the same.
Exactly.
We look at each other as we're different, whatever.
Well, no. They look at us as the same and have divided us.
Exactly.
And we've allowed that to happen.
Exactly.
The nationality is the word, the process is like the sisters sing love. But I had a different view on that. I had the thought that really what's happened is love has kind of been exhausted at this point. Because love has been what's been sustaining something at this point. But it's really truth that is now at the forefront. And that's now what we're in. We're in the era of truth. We now know who we are. We were all about love before, and love carried us, and love still is one of the strongest things. But I almost see that it's kind of they've allowed it to play its course. That love, the love of the couple together. That's not love anymore. That's a marriage.
That's not basically love in the same reflection of the word
Frequency.
No, I'm not denying that. I'm not denying the frequency, but I'm denying. I'm saying that the frequency played out in its mundane form, which is how we would love someone, I think has lost or at least we've lost what it means. That may be more the point, right? We've lost what that love frequency really is.
I think that I agree from the perspective that if you're just speaking about straight up science, frequency is, right? So conceptually, where you're coming from makes sense. But in terms of the actual frequency, the rate, the rate that wave oscillates is where the disconnect when it comes to the principle of love
exactly
is.
It's the principle of love. And that's where truth comes into. You're right with that one, because at the end of the day, we're gonna have to really strip off everything, because we've been constantly lied to.
But this is what goes back.
This is where the Bible says a house built on sand does not last. Right? So they have built their house on sand, and what's going on is that sand is shifting, and so they're shifting. Unfortunately, we still are allowing them to shift us, because if we become that rock, they can't shift us. They've been using us running with them as what's been keeping them alive.
But we just always wanted what they want or what they have.
Right.
Yeah,
some of us now come to the realization that we don't want any of that. We don't want BET. We don't want none of this crap. We want to establish. We just just in the past 10 years, I'm seeing sisters now not perming their hair, or brothers are starting to stand on it, we're coming to embrace and love who we are.
Coming into the truth of
Coming into the truth of that. And then from that, spreading that love and establishing the truth of what is. That's why we're here today. Because we're trying to speak truth, we're trying to speak facts.
Embrace this.
Yeah, I really embrace it.
And then also too, remember that that's the whole point of our people who have these issues or are going through these issues, recognizing that the foundation is this, because our first principle is love, that we're saying is supposed to be the thing and the highest energy, whatever, and all that stuff. Okay, well, if we got that here as our first principle, and Drew Ali been telling us since the 20s that love is all. That's all. Once we learn to love instead of hate, we're gonna change everything's gonna change.
As soon as we try to do that, it came in. I can use, hip hop as an example, or even in the 70s. 60s, families started to establish themselves. The black family started to establish themselves. Completely destroyed that. 70s, threw in the crack. And put in the movies, black exploitation movies. We started calling them women bitches. All these disgusting words. We looked at pimps and hoes. Hip hop came along, tried to establish us as them. over again. Even in the sense of reggae music, had to kill off those who spoke.
Yeah.
Who tried to speak the truth.
Yeah.
Yeah. And again, we're coming to that light. But the light is not music anymore. We're not even looking at them people anymore. I'm not even looking at celebrities.
Yeah.
Any of them people anymore, or these self-believers.
Yeah. But this is again.
So the one consistency is always that they are always using us to destroy us.
Exactly.
Always creating
the whole thing.
A negative counteractive to what is supposed to be the positive progressive.
Yeah.
And it's been systematic. I've read books where they knew we could not destroy this country or Africa or whatever until we were able to get the people to do it. They couldn't do it. They knew they could. They tried numerous times. It wasn't until they got the spies. So you see it? So the moment you truly understand that they have, it was saying the analogy of this cup. We're this little cup, and they have 20-ton bricks on this little cup because they understand how powerful we are, full of power, and so they got everything. Everything, piling it up, constantly piling it up, because they know the moment we come to the realization of how powerful we truly are, it's over. It's over, and that's why we have to take the time to speak to our cousins, our sisters, our brothers, and our groups, and just say, look, like I know you think that it's this, but we have to start getting.
Has to be a different
emotion.
Yeah.
And not just for us, but for the world.
The world's waiting.
So about this whole so-called Nova, it's waking up everybody. The groups that I've been going to, some of them, I've gone to a few marches, and people, it's about humanity right now.
Yeah.
People are waking up and saying, it's not about the color of our skin. Those who are trying to run this whole thing they can't stand none of us. They have to start looking at each other as human beings.
But it's not just about humanity, it's about nationality.
Yeah.
And this is why 100 years ago when they destroyed, Black Wall Street, it was Black Wall Street. And nothing changed. Nothing. I don't think marching and the all humanity one love, blood clot. No, it's nationality.
Crayon business will not work.
Period.
Won't work.
That's
the spell. That's the spell breaker.
That's it.
That's the spell breaker. Yeah.
Yeah.
Any questions before we close out? Questions or comments? Islam. Give thanks once again. Good session. We're just waiting for it to get warmer so we could start doing our little outside sessions. And we'll be sending out the email if you're we're sending out the email for the list for next week, because I think with all the stuff going on, we're good at our 10 people, so we should be able to keep doing what we're doing. So we'll be here again. And yeah, that's that. So we'll just close out. Face the east, 5 on the left, 2 on the right. Allah, the Father of the universe, Father of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Allah is my protector, my guide, and my salvation. By night and by day, to His holy prophet, noble Jawadi, Islam was.
That's my dad.
Huh? Oh yeah. That's crazy. Hey, Omar, you hear that, yo? That's Congo's son right there. Right here. It's Congo's son. What the hell? That's crazy.
No, I didn't see how I go up and see.